All right, guys, what's going on? Sorry about that. So, with this presentation yesterday, on Tuesday, when I gave this, the 5 steps to revamping your training and business model post-pandemic, something in regards to this, I realized that after we ended the presentation, I literally did not record it. And so I ended it. I looked on the screen. I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe I just did this. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to record the whole thing again right now for you guys in a little bit more depth and detail so I can answer some of those specific questions that you guys have and make sure that, we don't have to be so crunched for time, if you will, and allow you guys to kind of break it apart and digest it as you see fit. So here it is, right? 5 steps to revamping your training and business model to become more profitable post-COVID. So number 1, guys, just phones away, right? Let's just make sure that we have our phones away, please. And I know, even though it's pre-recorded and you're going to sit here and you don't have to worry about necessarily, asking questions or being called upon, like Dan said, or just being interactive. It's still super important that you just put the phone away for the next 90 minutes as you guys digest the material here. Because I think that's important. I think that it's important in a world that's digital that you still give everything a time and attentiveness. So phones away, let's grab a paper and a pen, right? Why is this so important? Well, in my opinion, you have one of the greatest opportunities beforehand right now. And we've said this Monday, we said it today, and I even said this on Tuesday. Right now, the private sector fitness industry is begging for high quality coaches and trainers and business owners like yourself. Because with that, right now, a lot of gyms and health clubs are starting to narrow down and shrink their scope of practice. So we need a lot more highly qualified professionals to be able to handle the clientele, to be able to handle the different demographics of people that we are seeing, because the people are going to pay a premium for your services. And this goes far beyond the training product. So right now, there's no better time to double down on your training business. And I get it. It's hard, right? We get discouraged. I get discouraged just seeing sometimes like where we're going. Our gym's going to get shut down. What's the future of private sector fitness? And so these are all different things that we're going to have to navigate. But I promise you, there's no better time right now to build your training business than in the middle of a pandemic, when health and fitness are literally the cures to immunity against the virus. This is a quote. So this is a quote actually by Barack Obama. This quote is, "The key is deciding, do you actually want to get something done, or do you want to feel good among the people you already agree with?" I'll read that again. The key is deciding, do you actually want to get something done, or do you want to feel good among the people you already agree with? So my interpretation of this is that strength and conditioning is filled with egos. You want to be the smartest in the room. That's great. Your training knowledge is your currency. I say that all the time. However, there should not be an inverse relationship between your knowledge and your income. I'll say that again. There should not be an inverse relationship between your knowledge and your income. Right? What's the point of having all this training knowledge if you can't help a bunch of people, or you don't have anything to show for it? Don't be all show, no go. So do I want to actually make a difference in my training business and see the income that I'm looking for to help provide for my family, create amazing opportunities, and give back maybe to those in need? Or do I just want to try to continue this pursuit of becoming the smartest person in the room, getting this approval of other people who also think that this is super important? That is something that we are going to try to change the norm on. So how can I take my training information and my training knowledge? How can I integrate it into my business model? And how can I finally serve a lot of people and help a lot of people? That's something that we're going to deep dive today. The $10,000 phone call. So as you guys know, I love Eric Cressy. He's been a mentor to me. He answers my emails, and I have kind of a similar trajectory as he does. Yes, he's the president of Cressy Performance, but he's actually the director of training and employee development there as well. He does some consulting, and then he trains a lot of pro baseball players. I started to work with a lot of pro basketball players, so our trajectory is very similar. Recently, when I got off the phone with him, he asked me this question. He said, If you had $10,000 in 30 days to rebuild your training model from scratch, giving what you know now, how would you do it? And he laid it out for me in terms of what they would do and currently are doing. And it aligned pretty much with what we're doing, but obviously some tweaks and changes to it. And we had to battle test it a little bit. So with that, the following 5 steps are what you are going to see that you can implement no matter where or who you are. Meaning, if I'm a personal trainer doing one-on-ones, if I'm my own LLC and I'm just training a set amount of people, or even if I am training people out of a garage, and then if I even run my own facility and I'm trying to really take this business to the next level. So I ask you, if you had $10,000 in 30 days to rebuild your training model and business from scratch, how would you do it? What would you do? We're going to do an activity here. So obviously this is pre-recorded, but I want you, before we even read here, I want you to list out in your notebook and with your pen. I honestly want to know what are some of the main issues that you struggle with? So you're just going to take the time right now. I'm going to give you about 3 to 5 minutes. And you're just going to sit and just map out what do you feel like are the biggest issues that you're facing right now? Are they, I don't want to list them. I have the 5 here, so try not to look at the slide, but just think about it. What are some of these issues that you're struggling with? So you could press pause on this presentation as you do that. Once 3 to 5 minutes go past, then we can resume. Now, over the last year, I've talked with many gym owners, coaches, and trainers, and here are the 5 problems that I see with most training models. Number 1, there's no alignment between your training ideology and your business model. So what does that mean? Well, you may think a certain way. Everybody needs an individual program. I agree. You may think that you need to do all one-on-one sessions, or that your training ideology is so specific, it's so detailed that you can't scale it. You can't reproduce it. And if you were to hand it to another coach, could they implement it 80% of the capability that you can? Maybe, maybe not. Right? Maybe, maybe not. No long-term commitment and buy-in. This is a big one. How can I get somebody right now training for the unknown, meaning the season, or meaning someone who might have to go back into their house because they have to quarantine because we're going to face another shutdown? How can I get this individual to commit to me for the long term? I'm not talking about a year, 2 years, 5 years. I'm talking about the next 13 weeks, 16 weeks, 6 months. How can I get that commitment? How can I tap in to their buy-in? How can I resonate with them and show them interest and empathy and get them to buy into what I offer them and how I can help them? Number 3, you're not maximizing your time. You're losing leverage. You are not maximizing your time. You're losing leverage. So let's say you have a session at 7 a.m., 9 a.m., 4 p.m., 7 p.m., right? That's a long day, 7 to 7 p.m. But you've only done 4 training sessions, some programming, you trained yourself, you ate lunch. It feels a lot longer, a lot harder. I'm bleeding what I like to call capacity because I've spread myself too thin. You personally might need to do a time audit and consolidate your own things in your personal life, then consolidate your training schedule and your business schedule. Because we like to say here, unused capacity. I'm losing leverage within myself and my business when I bleed capacity because I stretch myself too thin and I feel like I'm doing more than I have to. Or I feel like I'm doing more than I actually am. I'm sorry. Number 4, you don't have a built-in accountability and a communication process. The number 1 reason why most people want to be a part of something is because you feel like you're being held accountable. There's a reason why you did our seminar for the last 3 days from 12 to 2. You wanted to be held accountable. There's a reason why we opened up a chat, a lifetime group chat for you guys. So we have an open line of communication. We build this into our online model as well. It is so important to build an accountability and to build in communication with the people that you're working with. And we're going to elaborate on those. Number 5, you don't have an organized, trackable, and repeatable training product. This is one of the biggest issues that I see in regards to scaling a training service. If you are your own limiting factor, that is a problem, because it goes back to number 3. You're not leveraging yourself. You're not leveraging time. So if you want to train 15 people, 20 people, 50 people, 100 people, it is going to be impossible to to train all 100 of those people and individually program them if you're to do it the old antiquated way of, okay, they come in, I write down this, they need this, a bench press variation would be cool for them. This person, I think an overhead press, that's got to go out the window. You have to look through a different lens. You have to see things differently. You're going to have to figure out how to leverage that and scale that. So without further ado, let's get to work, right? Let's get to work here. So number 5, we're going to start from the top. We're going to go all the way down. Number 5, how to align your training model and business. I'm going to take those problems and we're going to address each of them. Right? In the VH Health and Performance Model, it's a free ebook that I wrote. I talk about the creation of a training ideology. This includes obtaining, information, analyzation, filtering, and acquiring new information, but the creating of your own training principles. However, the greatest KRA on your training methodology is going to be how well you align it with that of your business. Because look, I get it. You love PRI, you love Bill Hartman, Charlie Francis, Joe DeFranco. All these guys, they're amazing. And you want to go deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. But when you overemphasize the importance of upper thorax posterior compression in the relation to what angle the humerus is in flexion versus, well, how can I help these 100 people and how can I integrate it into my business in the least amount of time? There's going to be an inverse relationship between your training knowledge and your income. Because here's what begins to happen. The further down the rabbit hole you get of specificity, the less scalable it becomes. And if that's your goal, if you want to just make X amount of dollars, well, then you're going to have to keep it going down that hole. But when you begin, right, to learn the common patterns that you start to see in people, when you begin to group people and you begin to recognize these things because you have so much experience, this is why you cannot skip steps. You begin to remove yourself and look at your training model in an unbiased, objective viewpoint, where then you could say, hey, if I did this, if I rearranged this, or I noticed these people show these types of things, so I'm going to group them accordingly. And maybe I'll create a template for these 5 different demographics of people that I constantly see or fit into these buckets. Here are 4 super important questions you need to consider given your own training model, right? How can I help the most people without giving up all my time? How can I categorize the patterns, compensations I see in my clients? How can I design a training program that allows me to manage more than one-on-one or even one-on-5 in a group setting? How can I create a training model in which I can see consistent revenue over time without sacrificing the quality of my product? I'll read that again. How can I create a model in which I can see consistent revenue over time without sacrificing the quality of my product? That one's the most important because, again, it goes back to the quote I read. Our egos are in the way. We want to be the smartest in the room. We want to be able to show that we know so much about the anatomy and the biomechanics of an individual. But if I'm only just helping this one person, great, I get results. But I need to help 5. My business now needs to help 50. So in order to get to the next point, I need 500 people. There's got to be a connection point, again, guys, between your training model and your business. So why listen to us, right? Why listen to this? Well, I think it comes down to three things. I think at Varsity House, we've revolutionized the private sector sports performance industry in regards to creating organized and scalable training models that still have great quality, and we don't sacrifice that quality. And that is super important to me, especially being the director of training here, doing a lot of our employee development stuff, and just being that front line of defense and making sure our product is world class. And here's how we did it. Okay. There's three separate components. There's open enrollment, our flagship athlete programming. There's a small group training, semi-private training for adults. And both number 1 and 2 have been battle tested and systemized based off of principles and the data to back it up. So I'm going to break down each of these for us here in detail before we move on to some of the other 4 steps. So open enrollment. Open enrollment was created by my partners, Dan and Joe here at Varsity House. It was a way to help streamline our services while mitigating kind of the ebbs and flows, if you will, of athletes' seasonal schedules. I basically took this concept and injected steroids and D-ball into it to, I believe it's almost undeniably perfect. Nothing's ever perfect. I know I'm being annoying, but I think that we really have automated the way that we do this, and I'm really excited to teach you guys how to do the same. And here's how it works. So throughout the year, there's 52 weeks in a year. So we just broke it up into 4 13-week training blocks. This was something that I introduced. We used to have 5 of them throughout the year. Now we have 4. So we have 4 13-week training blocks, 52 weeks in the year. And these could be predicated on different off seasons, in seasons, post seasons, preseasons. So maybe for a football player, right, their preseason is going to be the summer. Their in-season is the fall. Their postseason is the winter, spring, and then they get back into the off-season, and it goes again, and it cycles through. For basketball players, the opposite, right? Their true off-season is the summer, their preseason is the fall, and their season is the winter, and then their postseason is the spring. But knowing this, you have to understand training as a whole, and you have to understand training in terms of an objective, in terms of a start and end date, in terms of a start and end goal. And so I broke up the block as following. I introduced this to Mike, and then Mike agreed, and then I kind of ran with it. And now I oversee every single athlete program that comes inside this gym, from pro, college, high school, juniors, in all levels and demographics. So here's the block curriculum. This is why I'm really excited that I got to pre-record this, because I'm going to just absolutely break this down in even more detail. I believe speed is the hierarchy of athletic development. I've written about it, presented about it, and I'm going to continue to do so. And we're going to collect a lot of data, and we have that information for you. Because speed in sport now is, you look at the game is ever changing. Basketball is positionless. Football, there's less physical calls. There's more receivers. Guys are faster. Guys weigh less. In team sports and even in individual sports, maybe outside of super skilled sports like fencing and golf, getting from point A to point B the fastest wins. Always. It always wins. And so if I can help an athlete improve their speed, both their acceleration and their top end speed, their max velocity, I am going to be able to help them improve their physical abilities on the field. And so we break up our blocks as such. We break up our blocks where max velocity and achieving a really good 40 to 60 yard sprint time is the goal. Depending on the season, it might be 15 to 20 yards. And so I'm not going to get into the whole ideology behind speed training. But if I was to combine what we believe here in training for athletes, our principles are rooted heavily in speed development, movement, and PRI-based work. And then a lot of strength versus work that Charlie Francis and Derek Hansen has introduced in the past, which is everything regarding around making sure that the weight room aligns with your speed work. So the block curriculum looks as such. We know we have 13 weeks. Weeks 1 through 2 are going to be your acclimation. This is an opportunity here for me to see who's coming in, how many kids do we have, get to know the kids. Just, we have a standardized template for this. So whether it's 2 times a week or unlimited, which is 4 times a week, I potentially get anywhere between 4 and 8 training sessions in with kids to get to know them. What do they like? I'm just discovering. How do they move? How do they run? How do they jump? How do they lift? Once we have this down, then we can kind of collect more data. That leads us into week 3. Week 3 is our testing and assessments. Now for this, we have 4 separate testing days, if you will. And day 1 is our movement. And here, the way that I structured it again, I believe, again, kind of in the PRI model, I think it serves as a great set of principles for us, because I inherently believe that all individuals, athletes, adults, gen pop, fall into 2 different orientations. Orientation number 1 is you could be anteriorly compressed. Orientation number 2, you could be posteriorly compressed. And within that orientation, you are either more of what's called a wide individual, or you're an individual who has an internal rotation base. You have a lot of extension. You're really, really more inhalation based in terms of respiration strategies. That's posteriorly compressed. Anteriorly compressed is the opposite. These are usually females. So females who are a little bit more rounded, their thumbs come in, their thorax is more, again, anteriorly compressed. They usually have posterior pelvic tilts. Their respirations are more exhale based, and their orientation is internally rotated. And that dictates pelvic function and gait, so forth and so on, but that's not what this is about. So when we know these are the 2 different orientations. So on Monday, I have 8 tests. We have an upper body and then a lower body test, 4 tests of each. They're going to go through, 9 tests, 4 upper body, 5 lower body. They're going to go through this test. And at the end of it, I made it super simple. It's a sheet of paper. I hand it to every kid when they come in. We're going to go 4-5 to a line. We lay them down on the ground. They are going to go through that test. My coaching staff is going to help me go through all of this, and they're going to check their boxes. Lying down, feet together, exhale, pull my ribs down. Can I internally rotate and touch the ground? No. Minus. Can I do it? Plus. The summation of these checks and balances are going to give me either an anteriorly compressed human being or a posteriorly compressed human being. Now, on Tuesday, our speed. Here's something that's important when you guys test your speed. You need a constant. Ours is a 15-yard 2-point sprint. And yes, it's not 4-point combine style. It's not 3-point. It is a 2-point. Why 2-point? It levels the playing field. I do not care how fast my hockey players and basketball players get out of a 4-point stance. If I'm training NFL guys, which I have, we do the 4-point stance because of the principle of specificity, right? The SAID principle. But a 2-point 15-yard sprint is one's absolute expression of linear speed, getting from point A to point B. That's our constant. So we test in week 3. We test it in week 13. Now, everything will revolve around there. If we're doing accelerations and weighted sprints and force velocity profiling, right, this will just allow me to further validate that 15-yard sprint. Did that 15-yard sprint improve from week 3 to week 13? Perfect. Done. But I'm sorry, and that's pretty much it for our speed, because that pretty much gathers all the data that we need. And we get a little bit more specific here and there. We force velocity profile with our college and pro guys, but you guys don't need to know that. You guys need to know the speed, and that could be across the board. Now, on Wednesdays is our strength, upper and lower. So we rotate these just based upon what we see is going on in the block. So usually we pick a bench press variation and a squat variation or deadlift variation. Doesn't matter. That's our upper lower strength. Thursdays are power. I believe in 3 separate power abilities. So meaning you could do we do a dynamic. So like a regular standing jump, we do a dynamic, and then we do a pause or a static jump. You're just kind of profiling different things there. And we're not going to break these down. Next, we do an approach jump. So approach jump is just maximally how far can I get off, 1, 2, or left, right, like a penultimate jump. And then what we do lastly, there's 4 power tests. And then we do a single leg broad jump test. So this is more horizontal strength. What is the discrepancy between my left, right limb? How far can I jump out? That will dictate everything from my 2-point starts to my change of direction to single leg jumps, bounders, so forth and so on. So those are our 4 tests. Now, breaking down the block. Okay. This is something that I didn't get to do for the actual event on Tuesday, but I get to do it now, which is cool for you, for a lot of the coaches and trainers in here. So weeks 4 through 6 is called acceleration accumulation. Here's something you need to know about speed training. There's 2 principles you must adhere to: ground contact time and kinematics. Ground contact time, how much time with each stride do I spend on the ground? Because this is influenced by the kinematics of my movement, right? In acceleration, I'm coming out a little bit lower to the ground. So there's a less distance traveled between my torso and the ground. I'm at 90 degrees of hip flexion because I need the greatest range of motion to get horizontal force and push behind me to traject my body forward. What does that mean though? I spend more time on the ground, greater ranges of motion. And then lastly, in the gait cycle, right, I'm on the ball of my foot. That's called late stance push off. So in the weight room, I want exercises that are at 90 degrees of hip flexion and that have my shin positive. So I spend more time on the ball of my foot. That's it. In a very consolidated manner. Now, power intensification. So now the kinematics go from this. This is my transition period where I'm not fully upright with a lot of heel strike. I'm kind of in the middle as I transition a little bit. So here now, the kinematics, my range of motion gets a little bit shorter. So my shin angle is a little bit more positive. My ground contact time is a little bit shorter. So in the weight room now I need to do exercises that mimic this as well, right? Well, what are some of those? Maybe a high box squat with a positive shin angle. Maybe a pin pull that's below my shin where I get, again, heel contact into the ground. So forth and so on. So now I'm aligning the ground contact time with my movements in the weight room, but furthermore, I'm also, my supplemental power movements are going to be a little bit more ballistic. So maybe in acceleration, they're slower. So they're like weighted jumps and single leg jumps because those take more time on the ground. Whereas in week 7 through 9 of power intensification, I want more bounding. I want them to spend less time on the ground, shorter ranges of motion. As we transition into weeks 10 through 11, absolute speed realization, here's what's going to begin to happen. Now I'm experiencing the shortest range of motions, shortest ground contact time. So in the weight room, I need the same thing. Maybe I'm doing a super high pin pull. Maybe I'm doing a super high box squat. Why? Because I don't want fatigue to take over between, I don't want to be doing full range of motion squats and then going and sprinting 20, 30 yards, right? My PNS and my CNS are going to be too high. PNS fatigue, my peripheral nervous system, that's muscular fatigue. CNS is nervous system fatigue. Because in absolute speed realization, there's different components, right? As I start to sprint a little bit more, so as I get going and I sprint longer distances, that requires more neural output, more motor units used. But my PNS fatigue, muscular-wise, is going to be less fatiguing. So in the weight room, I want to do less PNS fatiguing exercises and more neurologically stimulating exercises to help supplement my speed work. Week 12, the low stress. Low stress here, this is just refers to minimizing all volume, making sure my intensity remains high so I can super compensate or rebound, as I like to say, into my testing week. Week 13, we retest everything. So we retest movement, speed, strength, and power. So that's kind of the breakdown of our block there, guys. Like I said, I get to elaborate a little bit more here. So this is cool for you training nerds out there to kind of do this. So let's transition because a lot of you guys work with adults, right? A lot of you work with adults. Now that I'm thinking, like, Natalia, you reached out to me and you work with adults as well. So here's the small group model, right? Small group is for adults is a little bit different. You cannot have more than 3 to 5 people in a group setting, no matter the space available, because small group or semi-private that we like to call it is individualized training. I am not going to be able to individually train 10, 15, 20 people. I can do with athletes when I have all hands on deck. But let's say that your small group training hours are 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., and then in the PM, they're, 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. And you have 5 people max. And maybe your Monday, Wednesday mirrors each other, Tuesday, Thursday mirrors each other, so forth and so on. Well, the most people that you're going to see in any given day, if you were to hit all those time slots, is 30, right? 3 by 5. I'm sorry, 6 time slots, 5 people max. So that's 30 people. But that's why they're going to pay a little bit more for that service. So here's how I would automate your training. Every person that comes in, you're going to do an assessment with. Based off that assessment, create 3 simple training templates. Novice, intermediate, or advanced. create a 12-week program. This is going to be a little bit of work up front. Create a 12-week program based off each of those. A novice 12-week program, a novice intermediate program, an advanced 12-week program. They come in, they do their assessment. Once they do their assessment, you make the call. This person's a novice. They're going to do this program. This person's intermediate. They're going to do this program, and so forth and so on. It's templated out in advance. Therefore, when more and more people want to come train with me, I could easily train 5 people because I have 2 novice, 1 intermediate, 1 advanced. I'm going to have to set you guys up ahead of time. You're going to have to be aware of the equipment limitations that you have. So that's going to require a little bit more creativity on your end in terms of what do I have resources, what access do I have to information, or not information, to equipment and stuff like that. Here's how we do ours here, because we are trying to really hit a big number. I'm going to be honest with you guys. We want to have 150 people in small group by this summer, by 2021. And so the only way that we're going to be able to do that is if we start to systemize and scale our adult training. So I created the whole training template. We have an adult assessment. In that assessment, just like the athletes, they will come to 2 orientations: anterior compressed, posterior compressed. Under anterior compressed, I have 3 different templates: novice, intermediate, advanced. Under posterior compressed, I have 3 different templates: novice, intermediate, advanced. Same categories of people under the different orientation, 12-week progressions for each. So I will write out 6 12-week programs based on that individual's orientation, but they're templated out so you can repeat the cycles. You just switch out the exercises based off how well they're doing. Maybe they progress or they regress, and you'll have to make that call. And then each of those is 12 weeks. So that's something that's going to be really cool, because think about it. We're going to have literally over, I think it's 32 different small group training session time slots available. And if we were trying to get 150 people in, we only have 7 coaches right now, hands on deck. 7 coaches, that's going to be almost 15 clients per individual that they would have to individually program. That's going to take up too much time. Remember, rule number 3, I can't compromise time and not maximize leverage. So I'm going to take the onus. That's my role here of making sure that we do all of that for our clients without, again, answering question number 4, sacrificing time, without sacrificing time for money. I'm sorry, I'm a mess. Without sacrificing the quality of product for time. So here's something that's really cool that I did. Okay, so I ran a study here at Varsity House Gym. And it's just everything that I broke down with the open enrollment, but it also applies to adults, or believe it or not. And this kind of revolves around our theory and what I believe in, right? As coaches, we have 2 quantifiable efforts. You have psychological and physiological efforts. Psychological can be quantified if you actually think about it, right? What are some psychological efforts that we have as coaches? Well, ensuring that we deliver world-class service, ensuring that our clients are having a great time. They're listening to the music that they like to listen to. But how do we quantify that? Well, what's your retention rate? What's your check-in rate? How often are people coming to see you? You can quantify those things. Our physiological efforts, these are the things that we know and love. These are the numbers, the bench press, the speed, movement assessments. This is lunging. Did they go up in weight? It's very metric data given, I guess, if you will, or it's very tangible. So here's what I did. I ran a 2.5-year study. The study ran, it was about 2 years and 3 months, right? December 4th, 2017 to March 3rd, 2020. Here at VH, in any given year, we have over 877 athletes come to train. Of these 877 athletes, I used our POS system, MindBody, that I talked about a lot, to gather a lot of the information for our psychological efforts, meaning check-ins, so forth and so on. So here are the materials and methods, if you will. We had 250 athletes, male and female. We had 180 males, 70 females, ages 16 to 22. They played in all different sports: football, basketball, soccer, lacrosse, hockey, baseball, the whole 9, softball. Here were some of the variables that I experienced. All athletes did not participate in all 4 days of training. all 250 athletes did attend our flagship Tuesdays and Thursdays game speed training program. We had multiple team sport athletes. Only 26 athletes stayed for continuous and 9 open enrollment blocks over the 2 years and 3 months, 20 being female athletes. Girls are better, no doubt about it. Sorry, fellas, but the women are awesome. Results, psychological, right? Here's the key. So here are some of the results from this study. Psychological, quantifiable efforts. Average athlete retention rate. 8 out of the 11 total open enrollment blocks were completed by the 250 athletes. The average improved revenue on an annual basis was 7.7%. The attrition rate was less than 17%, meaning, but this did not include, so like this is, I mean, this included like leaving for graduation, they're going on to college, different sports they played, their season started, or different circumstances. Here was what was really cool. Out of 250 athletes, all 250 said that they would continue to train at Varsity House. Talk about being able to metric what we're doing here to make sure it's working. Well, those are those numbers right there. Now, right, physiological. Athletes who completed the 8 out of 11 training blocks improved an average of a cumulative of all their testing, excluding movement, by 8.4%. over the course of 2 years. The least amount of improvement that I saw from an overall 2 years was 5.4%. The greatest percent of improvement was 14.4%. Those are not made up numbers. I have all of them. So the systems and stuff that we have in place, they work. Not only do they work because it passes, I think, the eye test, they work because I have the data to back it up, both from a psychological standpoint and a physiological standpoint. And that's something that was super important to me. I wanted to see was what we were doing actually working. So step number 4, how to get long-term commitment and buy-in. Okay, how to get long-term commitment and buy-in. Here's a picture of me. These are all the women that I've worked with over the years. These are all adults. And this was after they gave me that wedding gift when I got back from my honeymoon, which was really super cool, super sweet. And I reached out to each of them. And I truly enjoy training a lot of them. And they've been an amazing addition to the gym. Right. But traditional models, to kind of get back on point, traditional models that exist within private sector sports performance centers, such as 1 session runoffs, 5 packs, 10 packs, paying weekly and the likes, whether it's a one-on-one or group setting, has zero built-in commitment on either end, on your potential client side or our side, right? They have the upper hand because in which they can schedule as they please, or they have the right to not show up, or maybe they prepaid, but then you still owe them sessions on the back end. So there's a lot going on. On your end, you're subjective to their schedules, what works best for them, not you, right? I used the analogy earlier. Again, number 3, leveraging time. If you only have 5 sessions in a day, but they're spread out over 12 hours, that's a huge issue. What are you doing the other 7 hours of the day? You're doing less things with those 7 hours than you are when you're actually training for those 5 hours, but you think you worked a really busy day, right? As humans, though, we like definitive answers. We like convenience. Most importantly, we like start and end dates. I mean, me personally, I definitely will pay a premium for something I know I can control, as I know you will, right? If I know that I'm going to go on vacation because I'm paying for 7 nights at this rate. You know, we can use this as people to our advantage, and we can integrate it into our business. The second component of a long-term commitment and buy-in is also centered around, accountability, camaraderie, teamwork, being able to constantly communicate with people. Athletes and adults alike must be held accountable. This makes them feel like they're special. This makes them feel like they owe you, and they want to make sure that they're living up to your standards, as they should, because you're delivering world-class training to them. You're delivering world-class service, world-class product, right? And you've spent your life's work dedicating to human performance, which is, again, guys, right? Again, which is why we need to make sure that we organize everything so that we don't have an inverse relationship between our training knowledge and our income. So here's some questions to consider, right? Questions to consider. Number one, how can I build in accountability without exerting extra time and effort? How can I get buy-in from my current or future community? So potential people that want to come in and work with you, clients, athletes, so forth and so on. Thinking about the 80-20 principle. How can I maximize my time to focus on the things that matter? So I think there's 3 key points here, right? 3 key points that we need to keep in mind, or 3 KPIs, key performance indicators, to make sure that that we get this done. Number 1, right? Long-term start and end dates. This works for small group. This works for open enrollment. It works for anything. For open enrollment, I don't need to elaborate on anymore. 13 weeks. That is 25% of a calendar year. So no matter what, even if you come to train here at Varsity House, I get you for 25% of the year. I'm going to get that 3-month commitment, and we bill monthly, which we'll talk about at the end. But I know I have you for that length of time. And just think about training. Nobody sees results in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even a month, maybe unless they're totally out of shape and they come in and then they lose 5 pounds, most. Built-in data and testing. Or well, let's even go back to KPI number 1 for adults, the 12-week program model. Even for somebody on small group, after I do the assessment, I'm still going to tell them, hey, look, I have a pre-made 12-week program just for you based upon what I saw with the assessments. What does that sound like? Right. And I know that the opposition might say, hey, look, well, we're living in a world where I need cash fast. People need to come in. Here's that and the other. That works initially, but that never works long term. Because if I can't get short-term commitment from you, 13 weeks or 12 weeks, whatever it is, how am I going to get 6 months commitment from you? How am I going to get a year's worth of commitment from you? So I need definitive start and end dates. You build their relationships in those 13 weeks. They see they're getting better. You're holding them accountable. Then they want to keep going and going and going. And you can always keep moving the goalposts back and back to hit new goals. Built-in data and testing. We talked about this week 3 and week 12, or week 13, excuse me, for our testing. For adults, it's the same thing. Week 3, you're going to test. Week 13, you're going to test. But it doesn't have to be ridiculous, guys. No speed test, jumping test, power test. Why can't it be a 5-rep max dumbbell test? Excuse me. Why can't it be a lunge test? Why can't it be a bench test? Why can't it be a movement test? It can be anything you want it to be. You just need to build in that layer of accountability. Lastly, report cards. So here's something that I do for both. For the athletes, we do report cards. We just have all of their pre and post testing numbers. We print them out. We give them to everybody, or we just share them because they're on their phones. We have all of our athletes in a group, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, and we just share with them that they can show their parents and show how much they're getting better. So that's how to get long-term commitment and buy-in. Now, number 3, this one's very important. How to maximize time and gain leverage. I talked about this today at the end of Joe's talk with a few people who are in the group. You guys will see some of this, and the rest of you will see it. You create the schedule, then you fill people in. It is never the opposite. I never build my schedule around people, especially in a semi-private open enrollment model. Privates who are paying a premium, let's just say $700 to $1,200 a month. You gotta be a little bit flexible because they want that high-end service, but still try to fit it into your existing schedule. Because I said it before, and I will say it again. It is very easy to feel like you're doing, I'll put this in quotations, a lot of work when you have 6 to, let's say, 7 training sessions a day that are like one-on-one, small groups, large groups within guidelines. But when you look at it back at the day, you only trained 5 to 10 people because you had 1 person at 7, 3 people at 10, 5 people at 2, another 2 people at 3, because they're all spread out. I call this bleeding coaching capacity. All right, bleeding coaching capacity. Because what if you could train 2 or 3 times the amount of people in 3 to 4 hours less a day? Would you say yes? Of course you would. What if I could tell you your day would be done by 12 p.m. instead of 8 p.m. because you consolidated the schedule, you found the right clients that worked for you. Excuse me. It can be done. I'm telling you. There are only 3 ways, though, in which this can get done. And so, obviously, you can't get more time. You can only create it, right? Here are 3 ways in which this can get done. Consolidation and delegation, or consolidation and preparation, session breakdown, time and energy for unused capacity. So for consolidation, look at your scheduling. You have 3 steps here. Step 1, look at your scheduling. What does your schedule look like? List out all your training sessions Monday through Sunday. Is it a 6, 7, 8 a.m., then I have a break, then a 10, 11 p.m., then I have a break, then a 3, 4 p.m. I want you to highlight all of the times that you do training sessions. Now I want you to ask, how can I consolidate these and group them? I'll give you an example. Athletes like PM time slots, you'll probably never be able to, throughout 75% of the year, to train athletes between 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. ever. That's just the undulation, the ebbs and flows of an athlete's schedule. So knowing that, let's consolidate. Let's say you train juniors and high schoolers, no college kids, or maybe train some college kids when they're home. Your juniors are going to train on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3:30 p.m. Your high school girls are going to train Mondays and Wednesdays at 3:30 p.m. So you have 3:30 across the board, Monday through Thursday. And then your high school boys are going to train 4:30 p.m. Mondays and Wednesdays. And then your high school girls are going to train Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. That's a 2-time-a-week template. Now maybe we make it 4 times a week. Okay, so your juniors are going to train Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays. Tuesdays and Thursdays are going to train at 3:30 p.m. Saturdays are going to train at 10 a.m. Your girls, they're going to train Tuesdays and or Mondays and Wednesdays at 3:30 p.m. for the 2-time-a-week. But then they get to train on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4:45 p.m. with boys. Maybe that's a speed and power session on each of those days. So the boys train 4:45 Mondays and Wednesdays. But then you have a co-ed class Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4:45 p.m. That template that I just gave you alone can hold 44 people. How do I know? We do it. We do it here. And so we have it super broken down and organized. Now, session breakdown, right? So number 2, session breakdown. How can I do this? Okay. Well, I need to know how many kids are signed up for this, time slot or this block of training. I need to know who is coming into each of these time slots. And I need to know what are the individual differences within the training hour. You need to be prepared for that session, because that is going to allow you to organize and break down within that time slot. And so now that I do that, here's the session breakdown. So let's go to number 2, your KPI number 2. This is the time stations here. Okay, and so I'll answer this here in the chat. Joe, Eric, you guys ask these questions a lot. So knowing this, here's how I would organize it. I'm going to have a GPP warm-up. That's just like a basic stationary warm-up to get the blood flowing. It serves no other purpose. That's going to be 3 minutes. Pick 10 different movements, up or lower. Then I have 3 minutes for my specific warm-up. So that's going to be more restorative and respiration based. So meaning like I'm going to do more of my breathing work. I'm going to do more of like a ground lat stretch, my long seated reaching, some of my single leg stance. I'm going to do adductor lifts. That's just more of my specific movement prep for whatever my training session entails. Push-ups, yoga push-ups, whatever I'm mentioning. But then that's going to be 6 minutes. You should have transitions. So I'm going to combine KPI 2 and 3. So then you should have transitions. We build in 90-second transitions, meaning that after each event, so like after our stationary warm-up, we use equipment, 90 seconds, get a drink, wipe it down, on to the next. Then we do our sprinting and power prep. That's 5 minutes. So that's anything from our marching drills, our A-skip drills. That's going to be any of like some of our light power prep drills. Then we have a 90-second transition built in there. So now we're about 12 minutes into our training session. Then we do our sprinting and supplemental power work. This can be done as a group because they can all kind of do the same thing. This is going to be 15 to 20 minutes with a built-in 90-second transition period. So once I have that built-in 90-second transition period, they're going to wipe down, go get a drink, and then they'll come back, right, for our next strength series. Here's how you're going to break up your strength series. You're going to have 5 separate components. You're going to have a main output. So your primary lift of that day, you're going to have your supplemental that supplements that main movement. You'll have some accessory works, and then you're going to have what I like to call your sensory motor. Kyle Dobbs kind of coined this term with compound performance, and I'm just going to steal it, Kyle. I'm sorry. But sensory motor. Sensory motor is all about the feels, right? So more restorative work, position work, a lot more stacking, a lot more reaching, a lot of more heel reference work. This is just more restorative and corrective work. But if you are going to do your time stations, you're going to give each kid a number before that group. So let's say you have 20 kids in one group, or only if you have 5 kids in one group, perfect. Each kid one starts at the main output, supplemental, accessory, and then sensory motor. Or I could have 2 kids within each group, or 3 kids within each group, or 4 kids within each group. Now I'm at up to 16 kids in one training session. You have to have the equipment, time, and space. But again, you can scale it up, you can scale it down. If you have 5 kids, 3 kids, it doesn't matter. Each station now, what I would do is I'd organize it. So like, okay, guys, you're going to get the bar for 10. You guys, you're going to get 20 to 30 pounds less than what you could hit on a top set of 10 for your single arm hook line press. And then next to you guys for your Cossack lunges, you're going to get 20 to 30 pounds less than what you would hit for your Cossack lunges. And then once you guys do those warm-ups, I'm going to tell you the next weight that you're going to use for your first set. Is everybody good? Perfect. Then I start the time. Right? Then I start the time. So it's 5 minutes. They're going to work up to a top set of 5 at RP7. You guys, you're going to work up to a top set of 8 with your supplemental hook line press and row, top set, or RP7. For your Cossack lunges, I want you guys to stay at a particular weight, or you guys can go up, so forth and so on. And then you're going to record it. Now, here's something, right? Playing devil's advocate, you say, well, isn't that going to water down the output of my main lift? And the answer is yes, but I want it to, because I'm trying to build in a layer of fatigue in my earlier blocks. Once you get going, what we do is then we just increase time. So now in my next block, my power intensification block, now the first week it was 5 minutes, right? The first 3 weeks of that acceleration accumulation block, it's 5 minutes. Then we move on to power intensification. Now it's 8 minutes. Then it goes to 10 minutes. So the training session gets a little bit longer, but you can still control it. So maybe shorten your warm-ups and your speed and power work, depending on what you're prioritizing. So we might prioritize speed more, so we shorten our strength work. So maybe we do 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 8 minutes for each phase, so we never exceed 32 minutes of lifting. With that though, then you say, hey, you guys are gonna work up to a single, a top set of 5. But remember that you can't have kids share equipment. So you mean to tell me you have kids that bench 315 to 405? Probably not. So now you can work up to a top single at RP8 in about 8 to 10 minutes. And then we remove a lot of the other accessory work, or we say you're only gonna do 4 to 5 rounds of this. And then as we begin to peak during that training block, that is then where we will, to remove that layer of fatigue, we might not time it. We're gonna tell them, guys, hey, look, for testing week, we're gonna go down a little for the next 2 weeks, low stress and then testing. We're going to not time it. We're gonna do this a little bit more organized so we can hit really good numbers. So that is how you should maximize your time to gain leverage within a session so you can handle more volume, which is super important. So number 2, right? Number 2, how to build in communication and accountability. Here's a real statistic. The average attention span of an individual in 2020 is 7 seconds, literally 7 seconds. You know, social media, TV, phones, text messages, calls, FaceTime, they all play a role in competing for our attention. That is how we are programmed now. We need a good hook to get us in, or we are out. Your business, whether online or in person, is going to be predicated and built on not how well you garner attention, but how well you keep it and follow through. I will say that again. Your business will not be built on how well you garner attention, rather how well you keep it and follow through. Here are some of the problems that you're going to face, right? I broke them down into 2 separate components. So athletes and adults. Excuse me. For athletes, you're relying on kids to tell their parents to sign up for your next week of training, your next block of training. You're relying on the metrics of email marketing to get enrollments into your program, right? Even the best email average open rates, 35%, 50%, very small. The bigger your list, the smaller. You have no consistent line of communication. Even if an athlete goes on to their season or they graduate, I want them to be able to have 24/7 access to myself and the staff, which is going to be a problem if the line of communication is cut, even if it's texting, because what am I going to do? Remember to text these kids once a week? Remember to text these kids every single time? Life happens. By being able to communicate consistently, I'm helping further facilitate my trust, care, and commitment for the kids that I am working with. Adults, right? Problems we're facing, adults here. Same thing, email marketing. Yes, email can be effective, but probably more adults than athletes use email, most likely. However, with the email marketing, it's still lower open rates. So here's an example. Up here in the Northeast, it's about to snow in a little bit. We're supposed to get 8 to 12 inches, a lot of snow day. If I'm just sending out an email to try to get to these adults to tell them, hey guys, class is canceled. Well, what if someone doesn't check their email till later in the day, or they don't even check it, so they try to show up and the facility's closed and they miss out on a training session? That's not their problem. That's a you problem. Furthermore, without a consistent lines of communication, I get short-term commitment. There's no check-in. There's no accountability. Lastly, right, I need consistent value building. Every client that I have, every client that you have, that we have as a facility here, you need consistent value building. You need to consistently provide value to the people that you work with. You need to consistently show them that there's more tiers to working with you and keep peeling back those layers. It is super important. So here are 3 KPIs, or 3 solutions, I should say, that we've incorporated to help that here, right? Number 1, create a line of communication that already exists. Okay? Create a line of communication that already exists, the cell phone. So we use Slack here. A lot of people use Slack. Slack's been pretty popular. They're almost a publicly traded company now, which is pretty crazy. It's been around for about 2 years now. Big companies use it for sure. I know Google, Facebook, they actually use it to communicate with their companies, FanDuel and whatnot. So I convinced everybody here at Varsity House to make the switch to Slack. This is how we communicate, and we've never looked back, right? Everybody uses it, including clients. Everybody will walk through the following process. Step 1, I bring them up as a group, as an individual. I make them download the Slack app through the App Store. I invite them to our workspace. From there, send them an email, make sure they get it. I invite them personally. Then I can see in the workspace, did they get confirmed? Did they get it? Perfect. I'm going to take the time to do it. You might say, well, that's time consuming, Adam. It is initially, because you have to do it one time. We do it with 100 athletes. We do it with over 252 adults. So you guys can do it. Maybe it's Facebook group, add them on Facebook. Maybe it's Google Hangout, whatever it is. Find a one-stop shop where you can communicate with everybody consistently and you can begin to provide value there. So that leads me to my next point. Build consistency into the communication process, right? What does that look like? Well, in some of our coaching groups, we have Monday, Friday check-ins and bi-weekly Wednesday meetings, right? There's no escaping. We hold everybody accountable in our groups. So here's how it could work. Here's an example template. Step 1, right? Monday check-in. How are you guys feeling? How was your weekends? You guys a little bit sore? You guys pumped up for this week's training? Perfect. Step 2, maybe is Friday's check-in. So, hey guys, today was a really hard training session, or this week was really hard. Here are 3 things you guys can do this weekend to alleviate a little bit of soreness, get some blood back into your bodies, and just prepare overall for the next week ahead. Step 3, provide value. Send an article, an exercise. It can be anything. Build in consistent value building habits into the people that you work with. This goes so far, right? I could be on my cell phone at home watching TV. Maybe I read an article, right? Maybe like I read an article that says something along the lines of, oh, look, here's a new way to lose weight. I'm making something up, but I copy it and I send it, and I just send it right into the Slack. Hey guys, here's something really cool I think you guys would benefit from. So little things like that are just awesome ways to stay consistent and communicate with your community. Okay. Lastly, exclusivity. Why do people pay $100,000 a year for private golf club memberships? Why do people pay a premium for exclusive cars? Why do people pay a premium for private training? People love the idea of being treated differently. we try to include that with our groups here in terms of like our athletes and our adults, because I want people to feel like they are special only if you join and train the gym. Oh, you want all of our exclusive content? Well, you have to become a member here. You get access to all of our online training apps, platforms, videos, so forth and so on. Oh, well, I don't know if I can make it. Well, then you're going to have to pay to be a part of that group. So that's something that's super important as well. So here's how you can do that, right? We emphasize that athletes who only train in the facility get access to the group. If you do not train in the facility, you can't get access to the group. I'm not concerned with building an online platform here with members at Varsity House. I'm concerned about if you train inside our four walls, you get access to the group and we post a crap ton of value. You cannot share this group and stuff with your friends or others, only if they come in, see the facility, and maybe they want to join or they're willing to pay to be a part of the group. Lastly, we will only be releasing, our best stuff here, not externally. So we release external content, but we also put our best stuff in the group. So that's, again, guys, something super important, how to build in accountability, how to build in communication, and just be consistent with your line of service, right? Automating your service like we talked about. Here we go. The last thing, putting it all together, right? How to create trackable, scalable, and a repeatable training service. Step one, create your training schedule and timeline. So this is a reiteration of everything that we've done. Identify the groups of individuals that you're working with and the demographics. Create a training timeline to get commitment and buy-in, 13 weeks. That's 25% of the year. Training schedule, identify your training schedule, consolidate it, create hours based off the demographics of kids that you're working on. That is individuality in itself. Training price, establish a price and a model. Monthly EFT is a way to go for consistent cash flow and consistency over time. Step two, create your training product. This is, again, going to be along the lines of your ideology, but you can use our system, but use your principles and beliefs. 13-week training block. The undulation, you get everything. So undulating periodization, just because the modern sports era just throws a lot of curveballs at us. So linear periodization is very hard to do. So we undulate just in terms of our speed, our strength, our programming, our recovery. That's built into a 13-week training block. Things that we do revolve around the 3 phases of speed development. They revolve around the 3 phases of gait training and respiration work. Lastly, we have assessments, testing, report cards that we can record, and how we do all of these things so we can put together an awesome training product to send back to the adults and athletes that we work with so that they can see the progress that they've made over these 13 weeks, which is super important. Step 3, create your coaching community. You can host this in Slack. You can host this in Facebook. Build in communication habits. Provide consistent value. So you decide what it is based off the examples that I gave you guys. Step 4, create your campaign. This is kind of a follow-up to Dan's Monday, but leveraging social, leveraging email, what, when, where, some tips for that, right? Building up your community, becoming an authority, consistent call to action, and actually be social on social media. Get in those DMs, reach out to potential clients, reach out to potential people, find where they are, find where they live, whether it's email, whether it's phone, and consistently reach out to them. Right? And everything that I just laid out in this presentation is the what, when, and the where, right? This is how we do things here. When you come in, you get an assessment, then you get your 13-week training program, then it's tailored to you individually, so forth and so on. That is a direct call to action, a direct campaign. Lastly, step number 5, this couldn't be more important. I saved it for the very last slide of this presentation. Coach your ass off. Be prepared. Be detailed, hold yourself and your staff accountable, deliver results, and always, always, always follow through on whatever you are going to do and say. So that's it, guys, right? That's getting it done. The secret to creating a career you're proud of and navigating these super and difficult, hard times, there is no secret. Right? It's the consistent work over time, implementing the habits, systems, and the things that we talked about today over time, and just making them better and better and better, just doing the little things daily. So that's it, guys. I had an opportunity to I had an opportunity to record this, and I think this one was way better than the other one. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Ask all the questions and stuff in the group, and then we'll go from there. So thank you so much. I'll see you guys in the chat.